3, 2, 1.
Sometimes the loudest battles leaves no invisible scars. The strongest people in the room may be carrying the heaviest burden because somewhere along the way, they learned that silence felt safer than vulnerability. But healing rarely grows in isolation. We were created for connection with God and with one another. The courage to say, I'm not okay, isn't weakness. It may be the first step towards becoming. Welcome back, my beautiful souls, to Becoming with Erika, a place where we heal out loud, grow through what tried to break us, and become everything we are meant to be. I am your host, Erika Caballero, and if this is your very first time listening in, I just want to say, hey, I'm so glad you're here. Today's conversation is one that I think almost every single one of us can relate to. Why do we suffer in silence? Why do we smile when we're hurting? Why do we tell everyone else fine while carrying the weight that nobody else can see? The truth is, we suffer in silence for many different reasons. And most of the time, it's not because we want to. It's because our brain believes that silence is the safest option. Does that sound like anybody? Can anybody relate to that? Because I'll be the first one to raise my hand. When I started this podcast, I made a promise to myself that I didn't want to become alone. I wanted to become alongside a community of people who were willing to heal, learn, and grow together. So, if I'm asking you to be honest with yourself, then I have to be honest too. I am guilty of suffering in silence. I smiled through things that were breaking me. I told people that I was okay when I wasn't. I've convinced myself that keeping everything inside was somehow protecting everyone else. Maybe you've done that too. If so, I want you to know you're not alone. I've been there. And today I am there. And today we're going to talk about why our brain does what it does. What happens inside the mind and the body when we keep everything bottled up? And most importantly, how do we begin to find the courage to let heal in? So let's get into it. If you've been with me for a while, then you already know that I'm a little bit of a brain nerd. I absolutely love understanding how God designed our minds because the more we understand how we are created, the more grace we can have for ourselves. One thing we've talked about before is that our amazing brain is always consistently asking one simple question: am I safe? Not just physically safe, emotionally safe, relationally safe, spiritually safe, safe enough to be seen for who I really am. And here's what's fascinating. If you've been judged, rejected, criticized, abandoned, betrayed, or deeply hurt before, our brain starts collecting those experiences like evidence. It learns, it adapts. Its job isn't to keep us happy. Its job is to keep us alive. So the next time we're thinking about opening up to someone, our brain doesn't just see the present moment, it remembers the past. That's where our amygdala comes in. The amygdala is a small part of the brain that consistently scanning our environment for danger. Think of it as your brain security guard. Sometimes it's protecting us from real danger, but sometimes it's trying to protect us from emotional pain, which could feel exactly like physical pain. So when we think about telling someone what we're really feeling, our amygdala can sound off the alarm. What if they reject us? What if they judge us? What if they leave? What if you become too much for them? And before we even realize what's happening, we stay quiet. Not because we don't want the help, but because our brain has decided silence is feels more safer than vulnerability. You know what's interesting to me? Sometimes we don't stay silent because we're afraid of getting hurt. Sometimes we stay silent because we're afraid of hurting someone else. Have you ever caught yourself thinking, if I say that out loud, it's going to break their hearts? Or I don't want them to worry about me? Or they already have enough going on? I know the pain. I know what the pain feels like. Why would I want to hand that feeling to someone I love? I know. I've thought those things many times. And it makes me wonder, am I protecting the people I love at the cost of hurting myself? Where do you draw the line? Like, when's enough is enough? Because there there comes a point where protecting everyone else starts costing us our own peace. And maybe that's the question we all need to ask ourselves today. Is my silence protecting people or is it preventing healing? You know what else I think keeps us silent? We don't want to be a burden. Somewhere along the way, many of us started believing things like they already have enough on their plate. I should be able to handle this. Someone else has it way worse than me. My problem aren't that big. Have you ever noticed how compassionate we are with other people? If a friend came along to us and they were hurting, we'd probably just tell them, I'm here for you. Or you don't have to carry this alone. Or thank you for trusting me. But when it's us, we suddenly have a completely different set of rules. And if we're not deserving to our peace or to heal out loud, we tell ourselves, suck it up, buttercup, and to stop or to push through or to stay strong or to figure it out on your own. Isn't that interesting? I definitely 100% guilty of this. I genuinely want to help my friends out because I know how it feels to feel that way. But I'm resistant to a friend to help me out in the same way. Like if I'm some kind of exception. Those thoughts don't usually come from what exactly is happening around us. They come from beliefs we developed over time. Maybe someone made you feel like your emotions were too much. Maybe they were told to stop crying. Maybe you grew up in a home where everyone suffered their feelings or stuffed their feelings down and kept moving. Or maybe life simply taught you that the safest thing to do was to keep everything inside. Our brains are incredible learners. If something protects us once, our brain says, let's do it again, even if the strategy no longer serves us today. So, how do we begin changing that? The first step isn't forcing yourself to tell everyone your deepest secret. Sometimes I think we believe healing means we have to explain our pain to everyone, almost like we have to justify why we're hurting. I've been there. I prayed, God, here, this is too heavy for me. I'm giving it to you. And I truly want to leave it at his feet. But then there's those moments when I wonder, do I need to tell someone too? Here's what I've been learning. There's a difference between oversharing and healthy vulnerability. Oversharing often looks like relief anyone who will listen. Healthy vulnerability is choosing safe people that God has placed in our life. Giving our burden to God doesn't mean we have to pretend it never existed. Sometimes we carry the burden himself. Sometimes God carries the burden himself. And sometimes he reminds us we're not meant to carry it alone. But sending someone to sending someone to walk beside us, healing doesn't require everyone to know your story. But it also doesn't require you to suffer in silence. Healing doesn't require oversharing. Healing starts with becoming aware. Becoming aware of the story your brain keeps telling you. The next time you catch yourself saying, I don't want to be a burden, pause for a second and ask, Is that actually true? Or is that an old belief trying to protect me? Because those are the two different things. Then ask yourself another question. If someone I loved came to me carrying this exact same burden, would I want them to tell me? Most of us would answer absolutely. So, why do we believe that people love us would feel any different about us? Sometimes healing isn't about changing everyone around us. Sometimes it's about challenging the story we believed for years. And I think there's another reason we suffer in silence, and we don't talk about it enough. Shame. Shame is incredibly powerful. What's interesting is that psychologists make distinction between guilt and shame. Guilt says, I did something wrong. Shame says, there must be something wrong with me. Can you hear the difference? One talks about behavior, the other attacks your identity. And when shame starts speaking, it convinces us that if people really knew us, if they knew what we were thinking, what we had done, what we were struggling with, they leave us. They judge us. They love us less. So what do? We hide. Not because we're bad people, but because our brain believes hiding is the safest way to avoid rejection. And isn't that exactly what happened in the Garden of Eden? After Adam and Eve sinned, the first thing they did wasn't run towards God, they hid. Shame has been convincing humanity to hide since the very beginning. But good, but the good thing is God has always been the one calling us out of hiding, not to condemn us, but to restore us. How amazing is that? If God loves us enough to restore us and we love our people enough to restore them, then we're worth enough to be restored. Now, let's nerd out just a minute because your girl needs this and because something really fascinating happens when we carry emotional pain by ourselves. Our body doesn't always know the difference between physical danger and emotional danger. When we stay in chronic stress, our brain continues to release cortisol, our primary stress hormones. Now, cortisol isn't bad, it's actually needed. It helps us wake up, it helps us react quickly when we're in danger, but when it stays elevated for weeks, months, or even years, our nervous system can become exhausted. We become more anxious, more irritable, more emotionally reactive. Sometimes we struggle to concentrate. Sometimes we struggle to, sometimes we stop sleeping well. Sometimes we become hypervigilant, consistently waiting for something else to just go wrong. And eventually, our body starts carrying the burden our heart has been trying to hide. That's why emotional pain doesn't just stay emotional, it often becomes physical too. God didn't design us to carry years of pain alone. Now, here's a beautiful part. The same God who designed our brain to recognize danger also designed them to heal through connection. Scientists have discovered something called co-regulation. It's one of my favorite brain concepts. Co-regulation simply means that our nervous system influence one another. Have you ever noticed that when someone you love gives you a genuine hug or sits beside you without trying to fix you or simply says, I'm here, you actually feel your body begin to relax. And that's just in your imagination. That's not just in your imagination, that's biologically. God designed our nervous system to calm in the presence of safe people. It doesn't erase the pain, but it reminds our brain, I'm not carrying this alone anymore. And maybe that's one reason God repeatedly tells us to live in community. Not because he needs us to, but because he knows we need each other. One of my favorite verses in 1 Peter 5:7. Cast your anxiety on him because he cares for you. I'll say that again. Cast all your anxiety on Him because He cares for you. Notice it doesn't say manage it, hide it, carry it longer, figure it out. It says cast it, release it, hand it over. I think sometimes we do exactly what I do. We finally give something to God and then we pick it right back up. That's wild. And honestly, I kind of hate that about me more than you can imagine. Almost like we don't fully trust that He's strong enough to carry what we're finally willing to let go of. I know I've done that. I've prayed, I've cried, I've surrendered, and then 5 minutes later, I'm carrying it again. Maybe you've been there too. But healing isn't pretending the pain never happened. Healing is trusting that God can hold what was never ours to carry forever. And sometimes God heals us directly through prayer. Other times He heals us through people, His places, and in our lives. A trusted friend, a pastor, a counselor, a spouse, a coworker, a family member. Sometimes the answer to our prayer comes wrapped in another human being willing to sit beside us. So, if there's one thing I hope you take away from today's episode, it's this. You don't have to earn the right to be supported. You don't have to prove that your pain is big enough. You don't have to wait until you're falling apart before you ask for help. Your heart matters, your struggles matter, and you matter. Maybe today isn't about telling everyone your story. Maybe today is simply about refusing to believe the lie that you have been carrying alone. Because silence may feel safe sometimes, but it rarely leads to healing. Healing begins when we let ourselves be seen by God. And when it's the right time, by safe people too. So today I want to leave you with one question. What burden have you been carrying that God never asked you to carry by yourself? Take a moment, pray about it, journal about it, talk to someone you trust. And if all you can do today is whisper, God, I'm not okay. That's enough. Because sometimes becoming doesn't start with having all the answers. Sometimes becoming starts with finally telling the truth. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Until next time, keep becoming one thought, one choice, one step at a time. Thank you so much. I love you guys. God bless.